Welcome, friends, to another edition of Thinking About Magic, Reclaiming Wonder. We're so glad you're here. If you could, in the comments below, type in where are you watching this from, your city and your state, and let us know what you think about Wonder tonight. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing good, Braden. Thank you so much. It's nice to see you, and I'm back. I'm back from a long hiatus of at least thinking about magic, but I'm glad that we're able to come back here and do this again.
Yes, me too. And well, you have a very good reason that you were off. You had your inaugural run at the world famous Magic Castle in Hollywood, California. You headlined the parlor of Prestidigitation for a whole week. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it was just an amazing experience just to be at the castle. You know, many of the people out there who know me know that I've been on that sort of dream or that journey to get there for a real long time, and to finally to have gotten to perform at the parlor of Prestidigitation. And I mean, it was both surreal, but also exciting, and to be part of that legacy now at the Magic Castle is quite the honor. So I can't say enough. And everyone was so nice, the staff, Braden, and they really made you feel special. The audience made you feel special. And I'm just so grateful for the experience nonetheless.
Well, Ed, no rest for the wicked, sir, because you came back and you went right into a virtual variety show with yours truly and Meadow Perry. And I got to tell you, we rocked that out. The feedback has been amazing from the client. They said that this was the highest event attendance that they've ever had for such an event, and the feedback was overwhelming. So thank you so much, Chris, for that.
No, thank you. And that was fun. I really enjoyed that event that we did for a Blue Buffalo company, just to give a shout out to them. But it was an amazing experience as well. It was nice to also do virtual performing, which I do love too, Braden. But thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. And Meadow Perry performed as well, and it was exquisite. She transported us to another world of bubbles and magic, and it was amazing. So big thank you to her as well. It looks like we've got a lot of people checking in on the live stream. We've got Andre from LA. We've got River Berry from Kukumum. What is that? All right, yeah.
That's a good place.
I imagine that is a real place. So that's wonderful. Oh, wait. She says, sorry, didn't Moab? Okay. Meeb. All right. Look at that. All right. Well, hey, you're in your own place, River, and we appreciate you being here. We got Nick Sorensen from BuddyCast on as well. Raul, thank you so much for joining us as well. Yes. All right. Well, we have such an amazing show for you today. We have several guests that I'd like to introduce at this time. We'll start with Napoleon Ryan. He is a magician from London, and Napoleon moved to North America in 2010 and is now based in Los Angeles. Let's welcome Napoleon Ryan.
Napoleon, there he is.
Hi, guys.
Napoleon. Welcome. We're going to be talking about Wonder today, and we can't wait to do that. Our next guest is nationally acclaimed family entertainer, Jeffrey Doc Grimes. He brings 50 years of performing experience to delight and joy of everyone who he engages with sheer fun and charm. This North Texas showman, awarded the coveted lifetime membership by his peers in the Dallas Magic Clubs, and recent past president of the Fort Worth Magicians Club. Please welcome Jeffrey Doc Grimes to the show.
Hello, folks. I really appreciate those kind words, but it all just adds up to one observation. I am really old.
Well, you're sharing your wisdom and your experience with us tonight, and I can't wait to dive in.
But it's been a good run. I recommend it to you.
All right. Everyone out there, I'm telling you right now, you better be prepared for what Doc's about to spit down. So it's gonna be quite the show. Our next guest is Michael Smith He is a retired pastoral and family psychotherapist, educator, and lifelong magician who explores the meaning and implications of make-believe, imagination, creativity, play, wonder, and the theatrical arts for magical performances in his new book, Make Believe, Discovering and Creating Magical Experiences. Please welcome Mike Smith. Hey!
Hey,
Welcome to the show. Well, we are going to dive right into the topic. Today we're talking about reclaiming wonder. You know, one of the magician archetypes, one of the powers of the magician is to reclaim things. And today we're going to be talking about reclaiming wonder and what is wonder and what does that mean. So our first question right out of the gate is, what is your definition of wonder? And we will go to Doc Grimes first.
well, thank you much. I have to, we are exploring some of the fine work of Bob Neal in this discussion, particularly his book, The Sense of Wonder. I like his definition because it's easy to understand and it's easy to digest. Bob says that from his perspective, wonder is respect. He gets it all in one word, or at least he tries, but then realizes that ain't gonna work, so he writes a whole book on it. But there's so much by implication in that. Respect is the response to the recognition. Well, first of all, that I, as an individual, I'm aware of myself, and then that I am aware of others. Then I am aware of that which is around our community of being, and then at some point we speculate about that which is not, and that creates a tension within us, a tension that has to be resolved. And when it can't be resolved, wonder can be very terrifying. But I've written a couple of notes on as a response to Bob's comment there. I'll share just a couple of them here. In the first place, I think wonder is the astonishment that I experience when I recognize that I can wonder. That's miracle enough that I can't fathom. It's sort of like looking at the mirror and the mirror and the mirror and the mirror. You see, it goes on deeper and deeper forever. Our wonder, more generally, is the tension that we experience when faced with mystery, and whatever mystery is. I'll stop there. Others can add insight too.
Wonderful. So there's a tension that you were describing between what we are experiencing and what we know. Let's go to Michael Smith. Any thoughts on what Doc had said, or obviously your definition of wonder?
Well, first of all, I think wonder can be difficult to define. We use the word a lot in many different ways. I'm wondering what I'm going to eat tonight for supper. Well, that's different than wondering about my place in the universe or the meaning of my life. Or it's difficult to nail down. And other words are sometimes used to try to get at it. Things like mystery and surprise and astonishment and amazement and awe. All of these words are sometimes used interchangeably. And yet they each have their own nuanced meanings. But I like the word respect that Bob uses. And let me just play with the word a minute. Respect is made of two phrases, re and spect. Re means again, spect means to see. So when we wonder, we look and we see again. We move it from the sense of the ordinary, that we go along in life and We don't, we take things for granted. But when we wonder, we sometimes stop and take another look. And so I like that phrase. Now, he also uses the phrase about squatting. And what it brings to mind is the little preschooler out for a walk that squats down and looks at the catapult or looks at the flower and is in a state of wonder about this world that they're now a part of. So I would stay with respect, but it's a deeper way of looking. And I've been married many years, and yet I can wake up some days and look at that woman and see something I've never seen before, or experience something that I've never experienced in her before. And so there's that moment of wonder. So I'll stop at that at this point. We can dig in if you want to.
Michael, so you're saying that so Jeff gave us from Bob Neal, wonder is respect, and you're taking the word respect and you're breaking it down and saying that we're looking at something again. We are seeing again something, and the example of your wife is great because that means respect isn't like a one-time thing. It's a constant thing. Would you say that?
Yeah,
that's accurate.
Well, we could walk outside. It's dark here in Texas, and we could walk out and look at the sky and see the stars and the moon and whatever. But I was watching on PBS the series about the universe the other day, and it was a magnificent series of how the universe came to be and how vast it is. And it got me into a state of wonder because even though we see these things daily, we don't really focus on them in this way. And that's what I'm trying to get at about and to put it in terms of magic. A good magic effect is where something happens, okay, and then bam, something totally unexpected, and it defies reality in that moment, and that then can be a creation of wonder, or the beginning of creating wonder.
And intertwined is respect.
Yes.
The audience is respecting what's happening, and the magician may or may not be respecting what's happening, depending on how they're acting about it. If they've seen it over and over again and aren't as impressed with what they're doing.
We can wonder about the ordinary, and we can also wonder about the rare experiences of life. In other words, either way, it can evoke a sense of self-reflection about this. The basic philosophical question, I think, that cuts through all of the different philosophies is, why is there something instead of nothing? Or, where does this world and this universe come from? Why isn't there just nothing?
A deep question. And so you're pointing out the fact that there's a broad spectrum of where wonder is. It's a big parentheses, if you will, from one end to the next. And we'll go to Napoleon next and get his take on reflections on some of the thoughts and his definition of wonder.
Yes, hello everybody. Yeah, so I think wonder. How I would define wonder, I feel it's a sort of it's a sensation, isn't it? Really, it's a powerful sensation that overwhelms your logical, analytical, critical faculties, even if it's only briefly. So you come in contact with something, and it awes you. You feel this sense of awe, or you can't explain what you're seeing. And so even if you immediately then work out what you are seeing, or you recognize it as being a view of an amazing landscape, you're on top of a mountain, you suddenly see everything before you, you suddenly then realize, oh, it's a view of this landscape, and I've seen landscapes before, perhaps. But you have that awe or wondrous moment where you see it in its full complexity, and it's almost impossible quite to comprehend that complexity. So basically, I think it's a sensation that overwhelms your logical faculties. It's a kind of reflection of the animal brain taking over the human brain. So the human brain in the frontal lobe, you know, that's usually where your critical faculties are. And when you experience a moment of wonder, you know, the animal brain usually kicks in slightly ahead of the human brain. And, you know, the animal brain deals with sort of fight or flight, or, you know, things you don't quite know what to do. You don't quite have the correct, maybe rational response to some kind of emotional situation you're in. So yeah, wonder, you know, overwhelms your brain, perhaps. You could say it's a sensation that overwhelms your critical faculties. It's an interruption, perhaps, in the way you perceive the world normally, or you're accustomed to experiencing the world around you. And it's got a strong relationship with the present. You know, when you have a moment of wonder, seeing a magic trick or seeing something you've never seen before that you can't quite comprehend, you know, it's very much based on that moment of seeing it. There's a kind of jarring temporal relationship with what's come before in your life or the previous moment. So there is a very strong relationship with that, with the present and being in the present. You know, you might be walking along a street and suddenly something appears in front of you, and you know, it might be something terrible, it might be something amazing, it might be an elephant, it might be a llama, but there's that sense of like you've been jarred out of whatever path you've got your head down, and suddenly you're jarred into a new experience of reality.
It's waking up, isn't it?
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, waking
or,
up.
Or a shaking out of your complacency, or you know, because I think we do get a little bit sort of bogged down, or kind of we go about our day and we get sort of our focus maybe gets a little bit narrow, and suddenly we're made alive again, rejuvenated to the sort of infinite possibilities of the crazy things that are around us that we perhaps haven't noticed.
That's it's like driving. Sometimes if we drive, we're not really paying attention, are we, to maybe what's going on. Our mind may be somewhere else. We may be planning something, doing something else. We're familiar with it, but something then comes along and jars us out of that. And that moment is kind of waking up. It's being in the present and in the moment.
Yeah, and I think wonder is a bit more positive. I mean, I totally agree.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder is hopefully a more positive experience than almost running somebody over or avoiding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it is that jarring sensation,
but
in a more pleasant way.
Yeah.
Let me add something, if I may, before we move on. I know we have other things to address here, but I think both Dr. Mike and Napoleon are getting the foundation of it here. I think it comes down to our experience and our response to the experience of irony. Irony is the experience of the unexpected. And when we encounter the unexpected, I like the way Napoleon put it there, our animal brain kicks in. It leads me to suggest that there are perhaps two different responses here in the nature of wonder. There's voluntary wonder, which sets us on a course of inquiry. And then there's involuntary wonder born on the shock and the recognition of something we can't fathom at the moment. And that response can range in its effect from a delight and a sense of preciousness and sentimentality all the way to terror that we feel in the presence of majesty, etc.
Well, I got to tell you, we've gotten into not only the definition of wonder, but we've gotten into like what is happening when we wonder. I mean, you guys are describing the things that are happening psychologically, the environmental factors that are involved to induce wonder, which is very fascinating to me. I want to go to Chris real quick, and we'll see. I'm wondering what our audience thinks so far.
Well, just to let you know, we do have someone saying hello. Luna Shimada says hello out there. I'm not sure if she's in there still here, but I think there's one individual who says, Frank Paris, if he's still out there, he says, I think that all magicians think about wonder every time they perform a magic trick. Thank you, Frank, for that insight. And that's all we have for now, Braden.
Awesome. Well, we are going to go into our next question because we're moving very quickly through wonder here today, because we've talked about what wonder is. We've talked a little bit about how you might experience wonder. But the question now on the table, and we'll go to Doc for this to kick us off. What is the difference between wonder and curiosity? Is there a difference?
I see a thank you, Braden. I see a very distinct difference. Here, I'm going to look at my note here. I was thinking about that earlier today. To me, wonder is a state or a condition. It may be a state of pleasure, of surprise, shock, astonishment, amazement, awe, fascination. But it's a state that we're thrown into when we experience the shock of irony, the experience irony, the experience of the unexpected. It throws us into a state. But curiosity, I think, is intentional. Curiosity is, I've called it an intentional stance, a kind of a readiness or kind of a psychic preparedness. And I really think that the curiosity is probably the precondition for any kind of exploration that may come out of it. And that's gospel according to Doc.
So in terms of some reaction to that, I mean, curiosity is a voluntary act of trying to put yourself in a frame of mind where you can maybe bring upon you more wonder depending on what you're doing. And wonder itself, however, is more like involuntary. It happens to us. Is that a fair distinction?
Yeah, it's the difference between a stance or a condition. And what did I say here? No, curiosity is an intentional stance, a readiness, a preparedness. It's sort of like putting on your jacket and ready to go outside and look around and see what you find. But it's the preparation for the quest, for the inquiry. Wonder is our reaction to irony. It has various manifestations and various intensities.
So when it comes to magical performance, before the performance, there's the marketing and there's the getting the ticket and there's the advertising and all of that. Would we be best served to try to induce curiosity with our marketing materials and possibly wonder? Or where does that process start from an audience point of view, do you think?
I think you start with the curiosity. You got to get them in there. Wonder's not going to get them in there. Wonder may happen and that's the gift. But the curiosity is what drives them to walk upstairs and take a seat. I'm sorry, buy the ticket and then walk upstairs and take the seat.
That's right. All right. Well, we've talked about a lot. I want to go to Mike for some reflection as well.
Yeah, we all are aware of the different audience responses. That some people watch a magic show and they approach it more from an intellectual. How did he do that? Try to figure it out. It's a puzzle. And it drives them crazy if they can't. Okay. The second one is the type of audience is there to experience a sense of play, of wonder, of awe. And while they may eventually be curious, they're primarily there to have that moment of sheer wonder and delight. So I think we all are aware that in our, especially in our adults audiences, that's going on, and they're both there, and
they're inextricably linked together in a way,
yeah.
and they go hand in hand. Napoleon, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of wonder and curiosity, and what audiences wonder about?
Oh yeah. Well, just quickly, following on from what Doc was saying, I mean, I totally agree. You know, wonder's a state, and curiosity is more of an intentional thing. And I think, but that kind of suggests that obviously wonder is triggered more by surprise, or surprise triggers wonder. Sorry, if I be more correct. You know, whereas I think curiosity is what comes after the surprise. You know, you watch a magic trick, and suddenly you get this moment of wonder. You've been surprised by whatever, you know, maybe the balls appeared under the cup, or, you know, cards appeared that you didn't expect to appear, or it's turned into something else. So you have that momentary surprise, and it gives you a sense of wonder. And then, of course, that's when curiosity kicks in, and you start to think, oh, how was that done? I mean, you may not go further in your inquiry, but obviously if you want to become a magician, you probably will think, oh, I wonder what method that was, or maybe I can learn this trick, or I wonder where that guy came up with his presentation, and you go down that path. But in terms of like curiosity, I mean, I would say, I mean, I don't know if they're more like it's a chicken and egg situation where you have to have wonder and curiosity simultaneously. I think if you're advertising a show and you have you do a stunt like Houdini or David Blaine standing on a pole in the middle of New York, or you're, you know, suspended over the River Thames, or you're frozen in a block of ice. I mean, I feel like that's the sort of thing that triggers curiosity. You know, and if you have a poster to advertise your show, you might have some kind of image that elicits a sense of wonder. You might have an image of you know, suspended in the air somehow, or floating in the air, and that triggers curiosity about your show. So I think, you know, sometimes it's hard to say whether one comes before the other, because I think, you know, the moment you create wonder, you are triggering curiosity, you know.
Yes, very well said. Very well said. And I like your practical thoughts on the advertisement pieces. If you really do think about some of the illustrations, and when it comes to performances of magic in the past and even in the present, there's this. It's like, what's the image of impossibility that I want to showcase in my advertising, right? And that's a really unique thing to think about, and it's there. We can see it when we look at advertisements, but if you don't consciously think about, wow, yeah, I guess that is how these things are produced in successful shows. And if you look at a lot of the successful shows, there's an image of impossibility, whatever that image may be for that performer or that set of performers. That's a great point, a practical point, Napoleon. Chris, what say you, my friend? You're taking this all in. What thoughts do you have on wonder?
Well, I think I mean, it's definitely a study. When these questions are brought up, I always think about, well, how can I implement them in my own act, and how can I actually reflect and be more aware of the idea of wonder? Because sometimes we're just focused on performance, but what we should be keying in on is creating wonder or creating curiosity. And so just by listening to everyone's definition, it just really makes me reflect. But for my definition of wonder, Braden, I almost look at it as a reminder for audiences, or even myself, that maybe the mysterious is possible. And perhaps that's what triggers the audience to look down that rabbit hole, is that they're reminded that perhaps there are things that can't be explained, or at least the idea is attractive. And so that's what I reflect on when we talk about this subject, is how can I invoke these sorts of emotions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you have gotten us right up into the precipice here, Chris. I appreciate that, because we're really thinking about how do we encourage our audiences to wonder during our performances. And I want to go to Mike Smith on this question and any reflection you have at this point.
Well, I was thinking about the process of enchantment, disenchantment, and re-enchantment. And we come into the world in a state of enchantment, but somewhere along the way we become disenchanted. It seems to me that part of growing up and the culture and education, all of those things. And then magic is a way of trying to invite us to re-enchantment. And it seems to me that as magicians, that's where we often got into magic because we became enchanted. We learned, then we got into it, and then we started learning all these secrets and methods and techniques and so forth. And it's easy at that point to become disenchanted. But the goal is, it seems to me, to try to move ourselves and our audiences toward re-enchantment.
So we're pushing them into re-enchantment. So where does, when we think about how the audiences view wonder, I mean, one of the definitions that was put out here is that it's a surprise. It's not controlled. They can't control whether they're going to be in the moment of wonder or maybe enchantment, if those terms align a bit. How do we encourage our audiences to wonder at the same time, avoiding them trying to figure out how the trick works? If wonder is different than curiosity, how can we stay in the place of wonder for our audiences?
Well, one of the ways, it seems to me, is by our own personal stories and reflections. If somehow those can be brought into our performances, even just for a moment, because what that can do is help the audience members think of some experience in their own lives. And in that kind of moment, then they're moving into a state of, I think, wonderment. So if I tell a story, a part of my story as a part of my magic act, about first time I saw a magic trick, this is how I felt, and this is what I did, and then it may stir up the beginnings of wonderment in them. And actually, I do that as a part of my act. I have some personal vignettes where I draw upon my own personal experiences and share them. And while they may all not be literally true, they're emotionally true in the sense of tracking with my experiences. So that's one way, Braden, that it seems to me that I can begin that process, as well as then having good deceptive magic. I mean, that's got to be there. I mean, that's just a given,
Absolutely. And before we go to Doc, because we were at Doc, we're going to come to you next. Before we do, I want to check in with the audience. We're talking about wonder, and ultimately we're going to travel down the path of how do we get to reclaim wonder. And I just want to call out that there is a wonderful book called The Sense of Wonder by Robert Neal, and you can get this at thetheoryandartofmagic.com. Larry Haas produced this book, and he sells this book, and it's a fabulous book. So I just wanted to check in now with the audience. What made you wonder? Put in the chat. If you're watching out there, put into the chat something that has made you wonder in magic, that's given you that sense of awe, that sense of respect that we're talking about, that sense of enchantment. We want to hear from you. What was it for you, or what is it for you? So put that in the chat. And Doc, we'll go to you. There's a lot to chew on here, Doc. I'll let you take it away.
Well, let me back up for just a moment. One of the questions that you raised, I think, is interesting, and it's going to sound rather glib, and I don't mean it for it to be taken that way, because I feel very seriously about it. You ask, what do our audiences wonder about? Well, I don't think our audiences wonder very much about anything, not on a daily basis, not from moment to moment, until they experience the unexpected, until they're slapped up across the face with something that they weren't ready for, that they didn't expect. And of course, that's irony. Irony always triggers wonder. So something we're going to have to do is to stimulate their interest out of a very different mindset. And I think Napoleon was discussing advertising a while ago. The picture of the floating assistant high above the stage, as a way of triggering that curiosity, which and so when they come to us, they have certain expectations. But I like to think of, first of all, it's something I learned from Dr. Mike and from Max Howard and others, that our magic performance is first of all a theatrical experience, and we have to understand it as performers ourselves. I think we do. But we often think in terms of that performance as just what we're doing on the stage, managing our props and trying to remember our lines and get to the climactic moment of the effect or effects, and not so much thinking about what's going on in our audience and with our audience. And I think we enhance the possibility of wonder through our performances only if we have established in that theatrical experience a play space where they feel comfortable. Jeff McBride and our late friend Eugene Berger didn't wait for the curtains to open. They established that play space 15, 20 minutes before the curtain opened by walking through the audience. And I remember my surprise when Jeff McBride was blowing bubbles, wonder bubbles, through the audience, and Eugene Berger was having fun with the folks. You got to create a play space which makes them feel welcome and comfortable. And then in that play space where they feel secure and comfortable, then wonder things can happen. And I'm going to say just two more things and then stop. First of all, we have to appreciate the wonder of ourselves. If we're not feeling wonderful about okay, I get the expression of Doug Henning in his in the 1970s in his hipster gear and the rainbow and all of that kind of thing, which smacks of sentimentality to people look at him from the outside. But Doug Henning was always in a state of wonder that he was there, and wonderful things happen when you recognize your own wonder. If you can convey the feeling that you are wonderful, not in a mean-spirited way or egocentric way, but the delight of recognizing your own wonder, then they can be invited to come and experience their wonder as well. And that's when wonderment can occur.
Wow, that's so true. I mean, when you think of Doug Henning, he embodied wonder. He was reflecting wonder back to the audience. He was a signal carrier for wonder with a whole lot of megahertz there. So yeah, wow. That I hadn't really considered that fact before when it comes to performance. And you're right. We really have to be the ones who are talking about these things as impossibilities, talking about how is it possible that these things can be achieved, and the wonder, as Mike said earlier, the wonder of ourselves, and you said wonder of ourselves, and the wonder of the audience themselves. And you've given some unique ways to increase wonderment that don't really have a lot to do with my next question, but still is sort of aligned, which is the question is, can adding complexity to a magic routine increase wonder And should we focus that there, or should we focus more, like you had said, creating more of an atmosphere outside of the pieces? That's the question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But should we respect our routines and see them for the quality of wonderment that they have? And would adding complexity, going a little bit further than the average magician to make a miracle happen, is that something that we should pursue? Would that add to the wonderment?
Yeah.
Let's go with Napoleon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think complexity of method is great. Complexity of plot, not so great. So I think, confusion is not magic. I think that's what Di Vernon said. So I would say you could have, you potentially could have complex things in your plotting and scripting of the effect and the routine. Maybe you could have a very complicated narrative structure to your show where you have callbacks of themes that eventually climax at the end of the show. But I think with individual routines, I think really you want it to be clear and uncomplicated, even if your method is very complicated, or at least very complicated or difficult for you to do. Just to say, I think about what the audiences wonder about. I think most audiences wonder about if this is it. Is there more? Are there more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in our philosophies? And, I know some people get into magic when they're kids with this sort of idea of being empowered or having control over the environment around them. I think Max Maven talked a little bit about that. But I think for me, my interest was more about, is it possible to do this thing? The fantasy of it. I know science is around and there's all, but maybe there is some secret amulet. Maybe there is a magic wand and you can do these things. Maybe there is a hidden world behind the world we see. And I think a lot of the audience, particularly children, who come to magic shows, or even adults, there's a question about, is there more than what we perceive that we can perhaps understand? And the magician is perhaps one of the people, like a medium or other guardians of the magic tradition, who can perhaps pull back the veil and show us things that we don't perhaps see in our normal lives, but are everywhere around us.
May I add something to it, Braden?
Yes,
from what Napoleon said. Napoleon and I both are children's performers. And I know from performing for 11 years, Saturday after Saturday, for Main Street Magic in McKinney, before they lost their lease and had to shut their doors. Too many of our kiddos come to our shows not for wonder, but to call us out. They've heard of Penn and Teller. They've been on YouTube and they see the exposure of the techniques, and they want to learn how to do all this stuff too. And so they're ready when they come clumping up that stairs and sit down. They are immediately ready to call you out if you flash for a moment, of course it. And I hate them, but it invites superficially a sucker trick that's going to turn it on them. And maybe out of that they experience, well, I don't know if being flummoxed is the same thing as wonder or not, because being flummoxed doesn't carry with it very much appreciation.
I think yeah, it depends a little bit on the age group. The younger ages live in more of a world of fantasy, for want of a better word. And I think when you get over about 7 or 8, psychologically, children start seeing the world in terms of the laws of science and reason a bit more. And so, obviously they begin to know that maybe you're doing something. You're not necessarily a magical magician, or you're not necessarily magical. You're a human being. Whereas, you could be a wizard for a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old. I think, again, maybe with the older children, it's about going to maybe a deeper tradition or a more bizarre tradition of magic, where you're perhaps summoning the supernatural in a way, rather than being somebody who knows very clever tricks. Again, it's like, I think it's a presentational thing, but I do agree there is this kind of fault line where kids are looking more perhaps to burn you if you're presenting magic in a certain way than if you're presenting it in another way when they're younger.
Yeah, and I can see how I will go to you, Mike, in just a second. I can see how the scenarios that you gave there, Doc, too. The flummoxed part is less probably about wonder and more about why was I wrong, and it's more about like bad. I got it wrong. Why did I get it wrong? And maybe there's something to that. So we're gonna go to Mike, and I want you to do your reflections if you would, and also tee us up on this next question. Is it important for magicians to reclaim their sense of wonder? Or should the audience just be the only ones that worry about that? Go ahead, Michael.
Well, let me speak to the complexity question. I think that I agree fully with what Napoleon said about that confusion is not magic. Perhaps I would want to apply the notion of complexity to our scripting. Sometimes we could use some good script writing or good editing of our scripts that could really help sharpen the sense of wonder that is in that magic effect. So I would want to apply complexity, not necessarily to confusion of the plot or even necessarily complexity of the method, but maybe more in terms of the scripting question. Now, I've already forgot, Braden, where you were headed. So give me a clue, and I'll pick up on it.
Absolutely, we're going to kind of bring this one home a little bit. But what is it? Should magicians worry, fret, put energy into reclaiming their own sense of wonder?
Oh, well, I think it's important to expose ourselves. I forgot. I wanted to say something to Chris around the complexity. I talked about scripting, but maybe, and I know little about mime. So, but you spend a lot of complexity working out some of your mime moves, and behaviors. So I think that's an example there. But back to the original question. I'm sorry, guys, but I think that we need to remind ourselves of why we got into magic in the first place, what we're wanting to help create in the audience, and to be amazed ourselves. I think that if I'm not amazed, I'm not sure that my audience is going to be amazed or have a sense of wonder. I've seen too many magicians throw away a good moment of amazement and wonder with some kind of crazy joke or aside that dismisses, for themselves and for the audience, that moment of wonder. So I'll stop.
I'm going to go to Doc next, but before I do, Mike, I'm going to stick with you for a second here. You had mentioned that Doc had mentioned wonder is respect. You had mentioned that respect is re-seeing or seeing again.
Uh-huh.
So the example that you just gave about the joke or the aside or just throwing it away, how would you define disrespect? How would you break disrespect down?
Oh, that's a good question. Disrespect is not honoring what you see again. Not appreciating what you see again. That's off the top of my head.
Let me respond before I forget it. And when that happens, to me, that's the definition of trivializing magic.
Yes.
And it trivializes the previous moment, the previous encounter, the previous trick, if you want to, in your lineup of effects for your show.
It just negates everything in the middle. Go ahead, Napoleon. You might be on mute.
Oh, so sorry. So I was just going to say, like Michael was saying, you're seeing that trick again. You're on stage performing the trick, but you've saw it once yourself. And so you're, by not letting the magical moment breathe, by, perhaps not being present in the moment and performing it with a sense of wonder yourself, you're stepping on that magical moment. Or maybe you have a funny line that kills the line might be funny, but it kills the magical moment. So you are disrespecting this moment that you saw before that made you want to perform that trick. And now you're performing it and you're seeing it again as the audience is seeing it. You're seeing it again. They're seeing it for the first time, but you're disrespecting what you saw before because obviously you're not allowing the wonder for your audience. And I think, it is important for magicians to sort of see their magic as an audience would see it, because obviously the more you see it as an audience might experience it for the first time, hopefully the better you will present it and achieve that sense of wonder for them that you may have originally seen when you saw perhaps another magician perform it, or you read it in a book and you got that sense of, oh, that would be amazing to perform in my show. I think the other thing, when we're on stage, like actors, we are emotional magnets. Most actors don't necessarily talk to the audience, but we get that, like comedians, we get that ability to do that. And the energy that we have is mirrored by the audience. So if we are amazed by what we're doing or taken by surprise by something that happens, or we don't quite believe it's going to work, but then it does work, and then we show a sense of like, oh my gosh, it actually worked. I think that definitely, by acting that reaction, even though obviously off stage we know hopefully it's going to work, by acting the reaction and giving it surprise and giving it wonder and giving it sense of of awe, we're triggering that reaction in the audience as well, because they're experiencing through us as a conduit the same thing.
And you brought up a great point, which is by disrespecting the magic, you've taken the wonder away, but you've almost repurposed the wonder, because now the audience is wondering, well, why did he just disrespect the why didn't he care about that? I've been watching miracles and now what's happening, or why are they? Then they're wondering about the wrong things. They're surprised and they have the awe about the thing that you shouldn't be wanting them to have a wonderment moment on. Now we're going to go to Doc and weigh in, please, and then also if you could tee up for us, give your thoughts on how do we inspire wonder within ourselves as magicians. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I'm thanking Napoleon. As you were reflecting on our own experiences and reactions to what we're doing, I think when we recognize the wonderfulness of ourselves and we are willing to recognize and honor the wonderment of our audiences, then we begin to look, or we should begin to look at the scripting and the performance pieces as we are doing it in a very different way. And what I mean by that is this: if we are working to give that audience that sense of wonder, we have to honor it when it happens. And let me give you a concrete example. I was doing a party for a family several years back, and the little girl had invited her neighbors and close little girl. For these kids were 7 or 8 years old primarily, and I was ready to do the linking ring routine. And my linking ring routine runs for about 2.5 minutes or so, with several different manifestations of essentially the same thing: linking and relinking and relinking and ring linking in more and more clever ways and more complicated ways. But when that first ring crashed through the second ring, a little girl just erupted in awe, and she said, "No way!" And then, "No way! No way!" And she turned around to her little friends there. "No way! Did you say no way?" That's all she could express. Completely unstrung by it. And at that point, you have to be alert to whether or not you need to go on any further. As if you go any further with the next phase and the next phase and the next phase, if that doesn't diminish that wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's so true. And thank you for sharing that story, Doc. That's a really inspiring
I don't know
story.
what your question was.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're gonna do a few things. We're gonna go around for a final thought. So, audience out there, if you have a final thought, put it in the chat. I want each of our panelists to think of a final thought on tonight's topic of wonder. Whatever they want to talk about, we're going to come back to you guys in just a few seconds. But first, we're going to go to powerful questions for the audience. So, here's some things to reflect upon. 3 questions, really. 1, how can we strengthen the wonder within our own pieces, in our own repertoire? 2, what pieces do we do that are truly unique and novel to our audiences? One of the themes that was talked about here tonight, and is a theme in the sense of wonder, is that things that are uncommon, that deviate from the norm, are very wondrous or can inspire wonder. The inexplicable can inspire wonder. So ask yourself, what pieces do you do that are truly unique and novel, that are out of the ordinary, that no one else is doing, that no one else is really seeing today? And finally, what can we do to inspire wonder within ourselves? Okay, it's time for final thoughts. We'll go to Mike Smith first.
Oh my. Well, I love to think about things like wonder, awe, creativity, and those things. You know, we had the program right off the bat on phenomenology, and wonder is a phenomenological understanding of human experience. And I think if we lose our sense of wonderment, I think we become less than human. And I'll leave it at that.
Wow. All right. And we'll go to Doc next.
Yeah, I think a way to engage our audience in wonder is to, from a technique approach, is to wrap it in a story. Mm-hmm. Wrap our show in a story that has a beginning and an end. Mm-hmm. And during the series of effects that we do, continue to engage our audiences in wonderful ways. Wrap it in a story.
Wow. Thank you, Doc. And Napoleon.
Yeah, I mean, I think strategies for creating wonder, be alive on stage. One way of doing that is perhaps a poem and perform that. Perform a script, like a full script. If you haven't written a script and you're a bit more of an improvisational magician, maybe perform something that is scripted and perform it in front of an audience. And that will give you a really good sense of, when you perform something that is from something outside of you and you absorb it into your performance memory, and then you perform it for an audience, you quickly learn when it's not sort of feeling fresh to an audience. And I think obviously you don't want to just go through the moves or go through the motions of what you're doing. You want to be alive and present with the audience. One way of doing that to keep yourself alive and present is obviously to talk to the audience and have a conversation with members of the audience and get them up on stage. And I think the other thing is, I'm going to slightly disagree with Mike a little bit, but in a special way, because I think he talked earlier about live, and I think storytelling is great, but I think sometimes, for certain performers, being extraordinary or exotic is a good thing, and it helps bring more wonder to your show. So I think biographical stories can be great, and they could be fake biographical stories of your character. But I think if you are portraying somebody that's a more mysterious character, you're creating an environment where people may find it easier to wonder. So, for example, if you're a seance medium and people have come into your space, and you set yourself up to be this kind of custodian of the supernatural, then I think obviously keeping that mystery in your persona and maybe not revealing too much about yourself can be an effective strategy for allowing mystery into the room. But I mean, in other cases, obviously, you might want to say a story that creates empathy and rapport with the audience because they relate to what your experience was.
Very well said, Napoleon. Thank you for pointing out the nuances of character development on stage. And that's just such an area that can be so mined for wonder and curiosity. And so thank you for that, Napoleon. Now, before we go to, I'll do my final thought, and then Chris, I'll go to you. But before we do that, we want to put in, if we have it, Chris, the social link for Mike and Doc, and it is neilmagic.info. It's nealemagic.info. Neilmagic.info. You can see their wonderful index of Bob Neal's work. Yes, nealmagic.info will get you there. I think it's just the one dot at info.
Okay.
Go there and check out their wonderful work. So we really appreciate you guys being here today and talking about this amazing topic from an amazing author and a philosopher of magic that we have available to us. So that's very wonderful that you're here, and we thank you for that. Now, my final thought, and Chris will come to next, is Joshua Jay, in his book, How Magicians Think, said something very intriguing. And he said that with every new magic trick that he invents or creates or learns, the door to wonder closes a little bit more each time. And that's can be kind of a sad way to look at wonder, but it's also a very true way to look at wonder, because for magicians, the doorway to wonder can close. Jim Steinmeier, in his wonderful book, Art and Artifice, opens up and talks about, and the first chapter is Magicians Guard an Empty Safe. And that if you actually knew the magic and the methods behind a lot of the pieces of magic, it wouldn't be wondrous at all. And so I encourage everyone watching here, my final thought is to go out, go see a magic show, go see any show, go see, as Napoleon said, go see a poet, go see a singer. Go to your local tavern and watch someone performing live for real people, and get inspired and be in wonderment for that. So with that being said, Chris, your final thoughts on wonder.
Yeah, Braden, I just wanted to say that it is an honor to be with Michael, Doc, and Napoleon and yourself, sharing these thoughts about wonder. And I know for myself, it makes me reflect on my own performance and how I can elevate it. And I think the one insight that really is sticking to me right now is what Doc said. He said that it begins with your belief that you yourself are wonderful. And I think if you believe that, then the audience is more inclined to play with you in that playground of wonder. And I think if you don't believe that you're wonderful or magical and what you're doing up on stage is real, then the audience themselves won't believe it's real too. So I think we owe it to ourselves. Doc, you said it best. Believe that you yourself is wonderful. So that is my final thought, Braden. And thank you again for all of you for contributing your wonderful thoughts.
Well, yes, thank you so much for being here. And our lease is up today on the Thinking About Magic live stream. So he is Chris Herren as Faust, and I'm Braden Daniels. And together we encourage you to keep thinking about magic. Have a great night, everyone.